to our main event in October. So if you haven't gotten your tickets yet, make sure you head over to our website where you can still grab them at our chill bird pricing. And when you're on the website, you will notice that we have launched all of the program details. So you'll be able to see things like speakers, time and dates, and things like that. Another really cool thing to mention is that if you are a ticket holder, you are entitled to apply for a 30-minute free mentoring session with any one of our speakers. So go ahead and grab your tickets there. Today is going to be our second webinar in our series, and we will be focusing on new business models. We now have Anton coming up here. He is from Gofore. And Anton is a design lead there, and he is going to be discussing with us this good growth concept. And it's a partnership, a joint venture between Gofore and Copilots, where it sort of aims to address and quantify sustainability gaps in business, in nature, and also in people. So please welcome Anton.
Thank you, Leslie.
Hello, Anton.
It's really nice to be here.
Okay, good, great.
Big thanks to Shift and also Shift for Citroen Shift, sorry, for inviting me to this session. So thank you very much.
Welcome. Yeah, just I heard that you actually have over 25 years of design experience.
Now you make me feel old.
No, but that's great. That's great. And I'm just curious though how you made that shift from sort of industrial design to now service and product design.
Yeah. I think anyone who's been in design for a long time, 27 years, I think you start at a very kind of detailed level, usually around the product or the service. You think all the details of the actual thing. But I think as you get further in your career, you realize that it's really about designing how people work, how people think, how organizations work together. Because if you can get them to do their job really well, then you get better designs out in the world. So I think that transition for me has been from this kind of detailed product design through to service design, all the way through to kind of designing organizations. And ultimately, like now, it's about like brand design and positioning around new kind of values that we want to see in the world.
Right, and working with more like better business.
Yeah. I think it's like it's a typical kind of designer journey, really. Going from stuff to people and to kind of the bigger picture.
Right, exactly.
I think that's the ideal. That's what designers really strive for, is to think about the big picture and to make the world a better place.
Yeah,
that's why we're here,
so happy to have you, and enjoy.
Cool.
And send us your questions if you have any, or an emoji in the chat box.
Cool. All right, thanks. Let's get started then. Let's check if this works first. Okay, cool. I'm going to talk a little bit about this good growth concept that we're developing at Gofore. And I think it's a really interesting time actually I work in a digitalization company. So what we do is we build digital services. And when we think about digitalization and the impact of digitalization in regards to sustainability, then it's actually a huge factor in sustainability. So what good growth is it's actually a practical toolkit for how to apply this kind of sustainable thinking. And I'll get into it, and we'll hopefully sort of help you explain what it is. But first, as Leslie mentioned, we've got this really nice partnership now with a company called Copilots in Tampere. And the really great thing about this is that Copilots are actually real sustainability experts. I'm not a sustainability expert. I'm a designer. And I think what we really need in the future to do this kind of work is more of these kinds of collaborations, where we actually are working really with, experts in different fields, because it is a systemic kind of challenge. And, if you're staying just within your company kind of, boundaries, then there's very little chance that you're going to be able to kind of address some of these bigger problems. So with us in Copilots, we're setting off on this journey now, and we're very much, at the beginning. So we'd love to get feedback and involvement from everyone really on how this should actually be developed. So why do we need good growth? You're probably wondering that, right? I know you can't see this text, but it doesn't really matter. I think there's some, and also as Marlena was mentioning, there's really a kind of crest of a wave now where sustainability is mainstream. You know, even just like 3 or 5 years ago, if you talked about this kind of stuff with customers, you would have got like, maybe, yeah, not for us, or, you know, maybe later. So, but now it's actually mainstream in one sense, from a generational point of view, where you've got like, you know, you've got like the millennials and the Gen Zs and these younger generations. You know, you've got people really demanding this from customers and demanding it from the companies that they buy products for. It's actually, you know, expected. And then this kind of, and then there's also this guilt, I think, from the people like me and a Generation X and earlier, who are really kind of, you know, hoping that we can fix some of the things that we've kind of damaged in the past. And then I think also this huge like wave of change in the financial institutions. So you've got, you know, the World Economic Forum, you've got people like JP Morgan, you've got the World Bank, really kind of, you know, taking this seriously and advising, you know, investors on how to kind of, you know, that they should be investing in sustainability funds going forward. So that's a great thing for me. And I think one of the missing pieces that now that's really going to help this go forward. And then I think on the other side is the business opportunity. There's a lot of money in sustainability, and I think, you know, companies are now realizing that it's not a black hole of investment. It's actually, it's expected from your customer, but it's also it's quite an interesting business opportunity in regards to innovation and new kind of new services and products. Trying to get this next slide to work. Okay, so we're a consultancy, right? So, you know, the offer that we have to our customer, in my view, needs to be relevant, right? You know, we're not relevant unless we're saying something that's really relevant to our customers and in demand. So I think, you know, for us to develop something like Good Growth is really important, because our customers are looking to consultancies and advisors on how to kind of work with this stuff, how to work with sustainability. So it's rich, and I've seen in the last 5 years, you know, the companies that I've been working for, you've seen gradually sustainability rise higher and higher up the kind of like the value chain into the sort of more strategic must-win battles, as they call them, at a kind of like, you know, at a C-level kind of at a C-level in companies. So sustainability is a strategic kind of business opportunity. It's no longer just a dusty kind of PDF, a corporate responsibility PDF stuck in a drawer somewhere. And, you know, there's a lot of predictions out there about the actual amount of business here. You know, we've got the European Business Report here. It's quite old, you know, even in 2017, they were saying, they're predicting $12 trillion US in sustainable business by 2030. So there's a lot of money. Okay. So let me try and explain what Good Growth is. Like I said, we're at a kind of early stage. So I'm going to show you some sort of conceptual work and some conceptual thinking that helps you understand, you know, what this is and how we might apply. So essentially, Good Growth is it's a way of working, right? It's a way of applying sustainability thinking in your everyday work. And being a designer, I've often like wondered, you know, when I've looked at how designers and developers work, I've often wondered, I'm actually quite concerned, because they have no tools and methods to address this topic. So when they're working with their customers, you know, they don't really have the methodology or the tools to actually address, you know, some of these issues. And therefore, you know, often, you know, the business angle or the product owner will lead the development and often come from a very business-centric point of view. So I think ultimately it's a way of working that enables everyone in their work, and especially, you know, in the kind of work that we do, to address sustainability. And also, secondly, it's a very concrete way of measuring that impact. You know, impact's one of the biggest kind of hot topics now in the industry, and being able to show that, you know, we are developing in a sustainable way concretely with some form of kind of metric or KPI is a very hard thing, but it's a very important thing to try and address now. So it's very simple. We have 3 lenses in Good Growth, and when we think about the work we do, we want to ensure that we look at everything we do in our work, we look at through these 3 lenses. And it's really simple, you know, like One lens is people. So of course we design a lot of services for the public sector in Finland, and that means that we're making services that are really improving the lives of people in their societies that they live in, and that's, you know, that's quite mature, and we've been doing that for many years, and ultimately that's a really good goal, and we'll continue. From one thing that's always been missing is the kind of environmental aspect. So we have a nature lens. So we have to ask ourselves, you know, when we develop a product or a service or an experience, how sure are we that that product and that service is not, how sure are we about the harm to the environment that that service creates? And how can we make sure that we reduce the harm to the environment, or even, you know, if possible, eradicate it completely? A lot of digital services, by the way, have really long physical value chains that are quite destructive, that people don't really think about when they're just using the service. So then also the business side as well. How can we think about business in a wider sense? How can we think about, there's a term that is known called stakeholder capitalism, where the economic benefit of a company's actions is actually distributed in a much wider way. So we can benefit people outside of the shareholder and the investor sort of, and the employee kind of community. So they're the three lenses. There's a very simple process that we're going to start to kind of build with at Gofore, and it's three stages: setting the stage, bringing to life, and making an impact. And I think the power of having a process like this in this kind of work is that it unifies people who work differently. And I think that's one of the systemic kind of problems with this kind of work, is that there's lots of different kinds of people trying to work together, often not working together at all, because they don't know how to work together. So the point of this model is to take this model to these kind of multi-stakeholder sort of scenarios and unify the way of working, so people can all come together around a kind of clear logical model that they can follow and work with. And also, you know, for us, it's a formula. It's a way to repeat success on projects. You know, if we do it on this project, we know we can take the model and apply it to a different project and run, you know, of course, not exactly the same process, but, you know, use the same kind of methods, the same tools that deliver the success. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time we do a project. And then I think the other thing about this is its flexibility. So, you know, we know when I work with clients, customers want a bespoke kind of, you know, service. They don't just want something off the shelf and go, hey, this will fit you. You know, often it doesn't. So I think the point of this model, and I'll show you in the next slide, is that we have where we are now is that we're developing these things called elements that work around the process, and the elements are essentially just collaborative exercises. So, you know, these collaborative exercises around the process address the three lenses: people, nature, and business. And what they do as tools is that they enable us to go into projects and make sure that we ask the questions. So we have like physical activities, physical workshop type collaborations where we can actually address these topics with the customer. And I think these elements are, in a way, the flexibility comes from the fact that, you know, you can show your customer, or you can use in your business, you can use, you know, you can show all of the elements, or you can pick one or two that are relevant to your particular case, or you can string certain elements together that make sense for that particular project. And that's the kind of flexibility I think we need in this kind of work. You know, you can also like try new things that you haven't tried before. There's certain elements in here that you might not have done before in your work, and it might push you to kind of address something that you might have been fearful of, or not being able to, you know, you thought that you couldn't address before without the kind of expertise. And I think that the combination of these elements together is the kind of gives your customer, or gives your business a sense that, you know, you're building something that's bespoke for your particular needs, and that's what's important here. It's not just a one size fits all. A couple of examples of the elements here, just so you get an idea. You probably can't see these very well, but I'll just explain that things like, you know, having an exercise around value chain mapping. You know, very often when we design digital services, we're not really looking much beyond the actual screen. But if you take, say, for instance, you know, a food delivery service, you know, if you look at all the stuff that's happening when you order that pizza behind the scenes, there's a lot of stuff in the physical world that we need to kind of like maybe rethink from a kind of environmental point of view, you know, logistics, boxes, the way we cook things, you know, the energy needed to do that. So that's one of the exercises that we've got here in the elements. We've also got things like metric setting. I'll talk about that in a second. And then also like elements where we go in and work out, you know, the win-win ecosystem. Who are the people involved in this business development? Who are the people that we could potentially kind of like innovate new business for, you know, people that we didn't think were part of this in the first place? Can we define some way of distributing the economic benefit to others, to startups, to education, to society? And then also, you know, things like from Echo Components' point of view, who are the sustainability experts, you know, being able to come into the client organization and give them the kind of like the rundown, the latest and greatest on what's happening in sustainability in your specific field, right there, right down. And that's like high value for customers. They don't have to like look at all this kind of dispersed material everywhere. Okay, so next slide. So this is, I'll just quickly talk about the metric setting, because I think this is one of the most important aspects. You know, there's no point in saying that you're working with good growth if you can't actually measure it. And I think the measurement is done at kind of two levels for us at this point. One, we have the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which is becoming a standard now for corporations and for public sector. So we're referencing the UN goals, but at the center of the metric setting tool, we also reference bespoke good growth metrics for the actual project and the actual development you're doing now. And I think for this is an important aspect because it links the goals of the customer and the goals of the project that you're working on very directly to the sustainable development goal. And I think one of the issues I've seen with the SDGs is that for some of for clients, they're often too high level. They're very kind of abstract, and it's very difficult to find out, you know, what within that SDG is the thing that we should really focus on. And that's where having a partner like Echo Components can really sort of benefit here, because if we have them in the room, they can make sense of an SDG and we can boil that down to a concrete good growth metric which sits in the middle. And then those metrics, we would track them, right? And we would measure them. We'd set them at the beginning of projects, or we could set them anywhere in projects actually. But the key is that we track and measure. And an example here, you know, again, you can't see the text, but no worries. Like if you take, for instance, the Finnish tax service, Vero.fi, which we do some work with. If you took, for instance, you know, say for instance, you wanted to follow, I think it's like number 8 or something, reduced inequalities, an SDG around reduced inequalities. And one of the aims of the Finnish tax service potentially might be to kind of increase ethnic minorities using the service, you know, because they want to digitalize that instead of those people coming to the office and sending papers out and forms and all this kind of manual work. So that's a direct link from an SDG, which is reduced inequalities, to in the good growth metric, say for instance, 20% increase in ethnic minorities using the service within the first year. We've also got an SDG here, which is responsible consumption and production. So that would relate potentially to the nature lens, right, in the good growth metric. So we could say, because we're digitalizing this service, we want to see a reduction in, you know, paper use and manual kind of, you know, letter sending and all this kind of, you know, this kind of stuff within the first year. So we could set that as a concrete metric, and so on and so forth. So I think this tool, and we're testing this now with some of our customers, how to make it more relevant and how do we get that concrete connection from SDG to actual good growth metric. So then if I finish up, I think this is a vision here, and it's something I'd really like to see, especially a technology company like Gofore address. Say we set these good growth metrics and we set these concrete metrics from the Sustainable Development Goals. It of course then would be really cool to use that as some kind of like business intelligence tool, right? So we can put those metrics, we can put those KPIs into some sort of business dashboard, right? And the power of that is that then you have the ability to not only track, measure, and kind of intervene, you know, and take insight from that and redesign and redevelop so you make sure that you are hitting those targets. But ultimately, you know, you also have the opportunity to be very transparent about that conversation. So, you know, for instance, there's a whole bunch of audiences that could benefit from that kind of data, right? And, you know, for instance, your customers obviously would benefit from that data. And they could see that the projects that you work on with them are moving in the right direction. I mean, we work a lot for the government cities. So, you know, setting KPIs, good growth KPIs that are more relevant to the sort of, you know, the governmental targets would be super interesting, and being able to kind of show them back to the city, to the cities would be also really valuable. For instance, for your own employees, highly valuable. You know, there's a lot of like demand now for more meaningful work, right? People really want to feel that the see and the impact from what they do. So being able to concretely show employees that you worked on this particular project, here's how the KPI is developing over time is super important. Investors for your company, right? If you can prove that, you know, if you're taking a sustainability stance and you can actually concretely show that, then investors who are more and more now investing in sustainable companies are going to be highly interested, right? And lastly, you know, general public, of course, you know, people are interested now in brands and companies that are really taking a position on this. It's not just greenwashing, it's action, right? Concrete action. And I think this is if you were transparent with this kind of data, this would be the concrete action that would demonstrate that you mean what you say, right? And then, of course, you know, the industry, your industry that you work in, the related academia, this kind of stuff, I think, pushes the bar higher on, you know, what's expected now. And so, you know, going from this, like setting concrete good growth metrics, tracking them, being transparent with them. So that's the kind of complete story, really. And I'll just finish up now because I've run out of time. I just want to make a kind of call to action, really, because we're at a stage now where we've got some fundamentals kind of drawn up, and we have a pretty good idea, you know, what this could look like. But it's really important now that we get some like co-creation with real customers, real businesses. We are doing that already now with some of our existing clients. But I would say that, you know, if there's anybody out there that is interested in like co-piloting this with us, you know, like co-developing the good growth model with us, then, you know, please get in touch. I think all the insight from the market and different kind of businesses and companies is super important. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much. Leslie returns.
Yes, I return. Thank you, Anton. That was really interesting. So many great points. We had actually a lot of comments and questions from the audience. We had VP, I don't know, that's the name, said, great stuff. Do you see this creating completely new jobs and titles at Gofore?
One thing it will do, I think, I'm not sure about new jobs and titles, but I think one thing that I'd love to experiment really early on is getting some sort of, we have like an internal system at Gofore that shows, you know, what people are working on. It shows their capabilities and their skills. So like, I mean, we could do this tomorrow. We could put that on that service and say, hey, you know, we could put the SDGs in there, and people who work on projects who are setting SDG KPIs could say, hey, I've worked on this project. You know, my goal is to deliver on this SDG. And then what will happen then is that, you know, you'll see that in the way we resource our people across the company and through the projects, right? So you can see that those metrics are there, and you can start to see that we're talking about them in our daily work. And I think like longer term, then yeah, I think there will be. I hope there will be more changes to the actual titles and roles of people, right? Titles not so much, but like more about the role, because I think it is a different way of working, right? And the cultural transformation is probably one of the biggest challenges overall.
Right, and that actually, well, it sounds like Gofore is quite flexible in being able to adapt so quickly, because you guys already have your heads wrapped around this.
Well, I think Gofore's got like, the nice thing about Gofore, I think, in the Finnish market, and I've worked with a few companies in the Finnish market, I think they've kind of got off the fence. They've said, look, we're gonna stand this position, we're gonna stand this, and they're calling it ethical digital. So, yeah, you know, pioneering an ethical digital world is actually quite a brave stance, right, for a technology company, right? But I think once you've said that, then like you've got to prove it, right? So it's nice that, you know, they've made that commitment. And but for me, it's also great because then we have to deliver the concrete stuff behind that.
Yeah, and that's really stood out to me that, you know, how can existing companies sort of pivot into this more sustainable model? And sounds like the first step is that they need a tool, right?
Well, I
to
think,
implement.
I mean, I think that's the way I would look at it I would look at that from these digital companies. I would say the way of working is really important. They need the kind of practical tools and methods. But I think, as I said earlier, I think the biggest challenge is the cultural transformation, because we're 600 odd people, right? Not everyone's gonna feel the same way about sustainability. You know, you'll get like 1/3 of the people who go, yeah, this is awesome, definitely. You'll get 1/3 that will go like, I hate this. You know, I'm going to leave the company, right? You'll get the other 1/3 that will go, I don't care. I just want to do my job, right? So I think, you know, I think you have to link the brand strategy, the company strategy, all the way through with the tools, the methods, the way of working, all the way down or all the way up, actually, to the cultural the cultural transformation. And when you're 600 people, the power is getting, you know, as many people behind that as possible, because then you can actually deliver it to the market, right? If you've only got like 1/3 of us, you know, it's like half-baked, right? You'll never get the impact that you need to get.
Exactly. It is a challenge for a lot of companies. I really love the good growth business dashboard that you talked about, where you're able to tie in the KPIs for the client with also, forgive me if I'm not saying this correctly, the UN Global Impact?
The Sustainable Development Goals.
Right. Could you explain that maybe a little bit more? Because that seems really awesome, the way that they're able to connect that, the dashboard, to measure.
The dashboard or setting the metrics?
Well, for me, it just seems really great that there is sort of a monitoring system that the UN has to sort of set this high standard, and that if companies adopt this dashboard, they'll be able to sort of plug in, right, their KPIs that connect with that to make sure that they're meeting the standard.
I think that's the key. It's like, it's about, because companies are, of course, you know, SDG, a Sustainable Development Goal, is of course important, but often what's more important to the product owner or the business owner of that particular service is the service, right? So I think what we're trying to do is make sense of this Sustainable Development Goal for them, for those people. So we pull something, we say, look, we definitely want the company might say, we want to go in this direction. We want to be seen to be delivering on these goals, on these high level Sustainable Development Goals. But I think the thing that's often missing is, you know, somebody coming in and working out, well, what does that mean? Of course, there's lots of detail in the Sustainable Development Goals, and there's lots of calculators and all sorts of stuff, but you know, that's too much work for most people, right? So I think what we're trying to do with Echo Company is bring that to the customer and say, look, we can look at the SDG, we can work out what relevance that has to this particular project that we're doing, and then we can set a concrete KPI for you that will then, you know, prove that you're moving towards an SDG, but at the same time, ensure that you're developing this particular service or whatever it is in the right direction. But you know, it's a vision, right? It's a concept still. And I think that the hardest thing is the data, getting the data, and you know, trusting the data and tracking the data. And that's something that we're talking to with our data guys now. Gofore.
Awesome. Well, really great thoughts, and everybody just pay attention, because he is looking for co-pilots. So remember that, and you can partner with him. Looks like we have some questions here. So if this takes off, people with knowledge on system thinking and how nature operates are going to be valuable, in my opinion.
So I think that goes back to your point, Leslie, about new roles. And, you know, I really do imagine that, you know, we'd have to, I talked about this, like, wider collaboration that's going to be needed, you know. So whether Gofore in the future would hire like systems thinking, we've already got systems thinking people, by the way, but like, you know, experts that we don't currently have around, you know, environmental sustainability and stuff like that, you know. I'm sure that it will open up a whole, but whether the question is whether I think I'm more interested in collaborating, you know, through networks. We don't have to like radically change our organization, not yet. I think the point is that we build these collaborations, and and again, that's a high value for customer, because we can bring those networks together, you know, and working with Echo Company, of course, our network is automatically expanded right out into an area that we haven't even dealt with before on the environmental side.
Looks like we do have one more question here from Anna Kolina. Thank you, Anton. I have
Anna.
a question. How would you make a company care more about their downstream impact? For example, a company producing mining equipment. How would you engage them into thinking about how their products are actually used to extract resources?
Yeah, that's like, I knew someone would ask the hard question.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a journey, you know, like there's a lot of companies and a lot of things that are being produced and manufactured these days that you know are wrong. They've got problems. Not wrong, it's just that they have issues, right?
Yeah.
And you know, and taking resources from the oil and like flying airplanes around and driving your car and all this kind of stuff. I don't know. I think everybody's in this kind of transition. Some are further behind than others, right?
Right.
You know, the food and beverage industry has really had to kind of like fast track some of the sustainability stuff, because the thing is they're actually feeling it in their business lines already. You know, like if you take a company like Fatsa, for instance, right, they're probably asking questions, you know, where are we going to get our sugar from in 10 years time? Where are we going to get our coffee powder from? But, you know, with the big industry companies like the mining companies and stuff, you know, maybe they're not as like directly, maybe their business line isn't as directly impacted yet. So, but I don't have an answer, and I'm sorry. What I'm trying to say is that I think it will come to everyone, and they will have to address that at some point, you know, and they'll have to diversify. And a lot of those companies they've diversified from, you know, I think Vatsil has done an amazing job of moving from like building ships and engines into like owning like sort of shipping data and optimizing, you know, the shipping lanes all over the world that to get from A to B in the most cost efficient, fuel efficient way, which is actually a huge sustainability story, right? So I think, you know, it's that kind of innovation that's needed, I think, for those kinds of companies.
But it sounds like we have to start with cultural and perceptions and then tools.
I mean, I think if you look at the world now, look how polarized it is.
Yeah.
And when it comes to this kind of anything that's complex and systemic, like doing sustainability work, you're going to meet that same level of polarization. You're going to meet people who don't care, and you're going to have to try and somehow, you know, either get them to care from a business point of view, or you walk away and find the people that do care. So it's all about, we have to fix this polarization, and that's I mean, I'm just working at this kind of like company level. You know, when you get to this kind of, you know, country level, when you're trying to work, I have no idea how those politicians manage. They don't manage very well, though, do they? So
well, this was great. This was really great. I think that there's a lot of really good takeaways as far as changing culture, the tools, and co-piloting with you, and I think that this was really great. So thank you, Anton, for joining us today, and we'll see you at the festival.